The Minnesota Wild are in a dogfight for position in the NHL Central Division. Seth Toupal of Locked On Wild joins us to discuss the battle for playoff positioning and what the Wild may do at the trade deadline. All that and a lot more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, so glad you could be with us today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. It is my pleasure now to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Wild, Seth Toupal. And Seth, the Central Division may be the tightest right now in the NHL. And anytime you think the Wild are kind of falling back, they seem to get right back into it. How would you describe the team's prospects as we head closer to the All-Star break and the trade deadline?
Well, it's so funny because even a week ago, coming off of that East Coast road trip in which the Wild went 1-3, they won the first game against the Washington Capitals and then lost the final three games. I was not as confident in the prospects of this team being in the top three in the division as I was them fighting for a wild card spot. And what's happened since? The Wild won both of their final games before the break at home. And Dallas and Winnipeg have both lost three in a row. So now the Wild find themselves 5 points behind Winnipeg with 3 games in hand. They're 8 points back of Dallas. They also have 3 games in hand on the Stars as well. But it just goes to show you that this year has been, if anything, completely unpredictable. The Wilds, have been struggling at points this year to score goals. And then all of a sudden they go out and they put together one of their best games of the season against one of the best offensive teams in the NHL, in the Buffalo Sabres. And so for this team, I'll put it this way. If this team plays smart, physical hockey and is able to capitalize on opportunities, such as on the power play, and they're able to squeak out an even strength goal here or there, they're going to be fine because defensively, what they have been able to do to various teams throughout this year is great. You've got Marc-Andre Fleury getting into a nice rhythm here with the last few starts that he's had, even though a couple of them were losses. Still kept the team in those games, and then he has that great performance against the Sabres. So you've got 2 goalies you can rely on. You've got Kirill Kiprizov, which is always a nice thing to have, and Matt Boldy over the last few games since he signed his contract extension. I believe he has 4 goals in 6 games since. So Matt Boldy heating up as well, and that's the recipe for this team to be able to find their way into the playoffs. It's just to be physical, be smart, and ride those goalies.
You talked about 5-on-5 goals. I mean, this is a team with a top 10 power play, but just 22nd in the league in goals scored. How do they address the need for more 5-on-5 scoring right now?
It's interesting because obviously losing Kevin Fiala to the Kings in the offseason, you figured that the offense was going to take a step back. But you've had so many guys that have regressed substantially. You've got Marcus Foligno, who was a 20-plus goal scorer last year. I believe he has 3 goals this year. Ryan Hartman has not produced at the same level that he produced at last year. But we're starting to see some signs of other guys stepping up to fill some of that production. You got Boldy, who is heating up, as I mentioned. Obviously, Kirill Kiprizov and Matt Zuccarello having outstanding seasons again. Jared Spurgeon, 9 goals for the Wild here this season. So he obviously has been a huge impact. We're starting to see some different line combinations against the Buffalo Sabres. The Wild put Marcus Foligno on a line with Freddie Gaudreau and Matt Boldy. which allows those two in Foligno and Gaudreau to do more of the dirty work along the boards. And Matt Boldy is going to be the guy taking the shots for that line. If that combination continues past just this game against Buffalo, Matt Boldy is the unquestioned guy that's shooting on that line, which is perfect for him. And I think this team is going to ride those guys. Will they make an addition at the deadline? Remains to be seen, but I think it's pretty clear if there is an upgrade for the Wild, it is definitely going to be on the offensive side of the puck.
And what do you think they would be willing to give up in order to get that upgrade? And what kind of player specifically are they looking to add?
The one that I think has been the most commonly looked at is Bo Horvat. Obviously, you're looking at a team that needs a top 6 guy to step in and to help this team out. And just with kind of how the center position is playing out for the Wild currently, you'd probably like it to be a center. But Bill Guerin, some of his comments recently have seemed to shift towards, if this team needs a rental for this year, he's fine with paying a price to get somebody. An intriguing name, and I'm going to have to do a little digging on this because not only do the Wilds want to bring somebody in to help with that scoring, but it seems like they got a couple of guys that they would be willing to move laterally in either the deal or a secondary deal. Matt Dumba's name comes up most frequently there. An interesting name that I saw pop up that the Wilds could potentially look at, depending on what happens with Dumba, is Sam Bennett from the Florida Panthers. And the Panthers continue to kind of teeter right on the edge of wild card contention. So is that a route that they maybe go? Potentially. But you've got guys like Matt Dumba. It's starting to seem like Jordan Greenway may be moved at the deadline because he is his play just has not really been that inspiring over the last couple of weeks. And so the team may look to move on from him. But it's going to be fascinating because we may see some of those lateral moves first, to which people will say, looks like the Wild are taking a step back. And then all of a sudden, Bill Guerin goes out and takes a huge swing. That sort of a situation at the deadline would not surprise me at all.
Give me one player who may not be making headlines nationally, but who has really quietly contributed to this team's success this year.
That's an easy answer for me. It's Joel Eriksson-Ek. He continues to be just a monster on the power play, and it's easy for him to be the guy right around the net that corrals the rebounds, hammers the puck home on any that bounce away from the goalie. But he's so good defensively and has consistently been able to add to his offensive game that a couple of years ago when he signed his extension with the Wild, you maybe thought, is this a little too much money for a guy that's more of a defensive center? And he has increased his goals production every single season since he signed that deal. He is on pace to be right around a 30-goal scorer, which for this team without Fiala's services this year, that's huge to get that type of production for that guy. He's one of the quiet leaders on this team, and so it's pretty easy for me to say that Joel Eriksson-Ek just flies so under the radar with what he does and is helping this team on both sides of the ice, and it's sorely needed.
Seth, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
You can find Locked On Wild on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Just search Locked On Wild. You can find us on social media. You can find us on YouTube. And we're going to be taking a deep dive into what this team needs to do post All-Star break to really solidify their position in the playoff push. You can also follow me on Twitter at Seth, Toups, on Twitter to see my takes on a wide range of subjects, from Minnesota sports to really anything.
All right, Seth, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product I literally use every day. I started taking AG1 because I wanted one product that would take care of all my health and nutritional needs. So what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all these things. And it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day, and that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.